Video games are poisoning the minds of the children and they're leaving racist comments all over 4chan. So I figured since we're taking a transition with the channel here and branching out to other types of videos, I'd ease into it a little bit more with some kind of softer topics. What better topic to get into than politics? So I go on Twitter pretty often just to see what people are saying. I don't tweet that much personally. I try to do more than I have in the past, but you know, it doesn't come to me to just share every thought that crosses my mind. Pretty often I come across things that I find to be dumb, and I have some of my own opinions about them, but I don't really do much with it other than just, you know, complain in my personal life about it. So I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll use that as fuel for more content. Maybe I'll make some videos about it. And what more appropriate way to do it than sitting here in my office with Creeper in the background. And anyway, I saw someone that I follow retweet this image here, and it was kind of obnoxious, so I decided, let's talk about that. So here we've got this tweet by this guy. I don't know who he is. I don't know what he's about. All I know is what he says. He says, as Trump blames violent video games for mass shootings, please see below. Video game sales per person per year in Japan. Why he's comparing Japan, I'm not sure, because I don't think they have guns there. Anyway, $96, and for the US it's $63, so it's like 2 or 3 games to every one that an American buys. I don't know. Gun deaths per 10 million per year is 6 in Japan and over 1,000 in the US. And of course this doesn't break down as to what those gun deaths are, whether it's suicides or authorized police shootings, whatever. It's like there's no, you know, distinction about what these numbers mean or what they represent, but whatever. You could debate that all day. The thing that got me was the last little sentence thing here, and it's, the problem is not video games. The problem is assault rifles! So there's a few reasons why that's kind of annoying to me, and I just wanted to go over them, kind of give you guys some food for thought. I'm not really here to take one side of the issue or the other. Personally, I understand how people might feel one way or the other about the issue. I personally don't really believe in the whole like blame the gun kind of mentality a lot of people have, but I definitely understand where they're coming from and like why people feel that way. Now, of course, there is the first thing, the semantics, like the assault rifles thing is kind of you know, it's an abused term. When people use these assault style rifles, they're not actually assault rifles, but the people who are against them claim that that's like a semantics argument. It doesn't really matter, so we'll leave that one be. You know, we get what he's trying to say with the assault rifle thing. What gets me is that he's trying to like bring up numbers and be more or less an intellectual with statistics in saying it's not video games' fault, and then he suddenly just throws all that to the wind and goes, it's assault rifles! Now, of course, I get what he's doing here. I'm not saying that it's a completely like poorly laid out tweet or message that he's trying to convey here, but it seems like he's kind of doing exactly what he's preaching against. And that's the thing. It's like, I don't really care where you line up on an issue. All I care about is whether or not your logic is consistent and your reasoning makes sense. So basically, you know, if I were to give what I think might be a fitting analogy here is he's basically saying, like, let's just say Trump is talking about kids tweeting or saying bad things on the internet. So let's say Trump goes, video games are poisoning the minds of the children and they're leaving racist comments all over 4chan. And then this guy comes in and like breaks down the statistics of how many hate comments in one country over another and things like that. And then he goes, it's not the video game's fault, it's the damn iPhones. Because clearly the technology you use to abuse a right is what's at fault, right? So that's kind of my issue with it, and my issue with a lot of these complaints, like a lot of the arguments that I'm seeing people put forward. You know, all this anti-gun, like gun reform now, and whatever, all these hashtags and stuff that's going on. Like I said, I'm not here to say that I know the solution to the problem or whatever, but I just think that a lot of people are pretty dishonest, or at least extremely unaware of how biased they are. And a lot of the stuff that's being put forward, these ideas of like how to control gun sales in the United States and things like that, like a lot of the mass shootings that have happened in the past that have brought up this argument over and over and over typically wouldn't have been stopped by the laws that they're proposing. And it's also an issue, like everybody wants to gloss over it and kind of ignore it or whatever, but there is an issue when it comes to something that's a right versus a privilege, and taking those rights away or hurting the people, the vast majority of people who are not doing anything wrong with that, and they're going to be affected negatively by the few who are doing bad things. So, you know, a lot of people think, you know, maybe that's something that doesn't really matter. You know, if you're a law-abiding citizen or whatever, then you should be on board with those protections and things like that. But there's obviously contention about whether or not those things can actually be helped by the legislation that people are proposing. So, like I said, there's a lot of debate about all this stuff, but the main thing that I find annoying is just the poor arguments, and not so much just the poor arguments, but the following that they have. Like, a lot of people subscribe to these ideas and these just, I don't know, they're just not well thought out arguments. Anyway, there's a bunch of other stuff I could probably say about this issue. I mean, it's a pretty broad topic with a lot of different things that would have to be covered and discussed, but I don't really feel like this tweet warrants that. I just kind of wanted to touch on the sort of hypocrisy of it. And, you know, like I said, if it were an issue of free speech, you're basically blaming the technology someone uses to commit an act and not the person or whatever. And I don't agree with blaming video games. I do think there is an argument to be made about video games or media in general, like whether it's television or movies or music or video games or even books, where you have unstable people who are using these types of materials to reinforce their odd biases and their skewed perspective of the world and things like that. And that's something that shouldn't be just thrown out. You can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, as they say. But I don't think you can blame video games for making kids violent. I think there are studies and stuff that prove that that's not the case. So that's a dumb thing to say. You know, maybe it's somewhat hyperbolic in order to get discussion going around the topic, which is understandable too. But for anyone who actually believes that, probably not. But then to churn that argument, to suggest that that is a stupid way of looking at things, trying to understand like what makes someone do this, and then saying it's the tool they used, I think it's a little bit disingenuous, and it's a manipulation of the facts and the statistics and whatever it is you're trying to use to make your point. I don't think it was a well-constructed argument, and I just wanted to say because I thought it was dumb. Anyway, that's all I have to say about it for now. What does my cat think? Alright, so we found her. We're gonna see what her thoughts are on the shootings in the United States. Two Toes, what do you think about gun violence in the United States of America?
I think everything in this world would be better in a fiery pit of despair. And then I would rule everything and have all the milk and crackers I could ever want. And it would be mine, and everyone else would suffer in the fire.
Okay. Is that it?